Welcome to Cancer and Peace. My name is Sean Stewart, and I'm here with Peter Scalzo, our host and 20-year cancer survivor, and we have another episode from the wall today.
Yeah, thanks, Sean.
Are you excited about this
I
one?
am excited. I'm just back from an international trip to Ireland and Scotland, and my daughter decided to have her wedding ceremony in a castle in Scotland for 3 days, so it was just a lot of fun. It was a great break.
Yeah, and it was interesting. You shared a touch of a video that she shared of you, and she said some things at the very start that really speak to. It's going to fit in a little bit with our conversation today. Okay. I think is that she didn't know whether or not you would be there for this event, and it was one of the big things. It was an emotional time for you to hear that.
Yeah, because she started to cry, and, she basically said, all I ever wanted was for you to be here to walk me down the aisle. And, that question would have been an unknown for sure. Will Peter be here? I mean, and she was she's an ICU nurse in Manhattan, and now she's doing a 3-year program in CRNA to become an anesthetist, a nurse anesthetist. So she's heavily entrenched in the medical world in that space. And I believe, 3 of my children are entrenched. One is Dr. Scalzo now. He just graduated medical school.
Really cool, yeah.
Yeah, so I think my medical journey has had a huge impact on my children. I have six children, and I think especially on Pearl and my daughter who just got married, and she, she spent many a day in the hospital with me. Yeah. So.
Yeah. The medical journey is one aspect of this. The thing that stuck out to me was she said that you were her best friend, the person she calls when she's sad, and the person she calls when she's really happy.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I mean, I think all of us would want that up with our kids, that we are viewed as, when they're adults. Obviously, you had this period of raising your kids where there's a imbalance in relationship. It's a natural imbalance in a relationship where you have to play a role of authority and guidance. But now that she's an adult, as a best friend, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, there was tension with her relationship with her mother, and I leaned on my kids a little bit. I mean, we can talk about how do you treat your family when you're given a metastatic cancer or any kind of a cancer diagnosis. And I chose, because I was given a death diagnosis, I chose to be vulnerable, honest, and real with my kids about that. And coupled with being head deep, I won't even say neck deep, I'll say head deep in a recovery / inner journey. And in that recovery journey, I had to face myself and my character defects, my sin issues, and the positives too, but I had to face myself. And one thing that I've learned from that journey is that I don't have the answers, and listening is better than speaking, and not to be judgmental, because all I had to do was look at my own life and say, who am I to judge anyone because of my sin nature and the things that I do. And so that really translated for me as a dad into what I consider to be a safe dad, a dad that the children could come to and say, this is what's going on. What do you think? No matter what journeys they're on. And they're on different types of journeys, right?
Yeah.
And so I credit the Lord with all of it, because I wouldn't be here today without the cancer journey, dealing with marital issues, but the whole recovery inner journey.
Yeah, and this is a bit the reason why I wanted to raise this, because we're going to talk about the wildness. But you touched on something that I think is big. We talk about safety here a lot, and the safety of being able to your family, the people around you, can share and be who they are. And sometimes in life we lose ourselves trying to be safe. And so I think what you described, though, is yes, your kids are all on different journeys. They have different beliefs in certain areas of their lives or ways of interacting in the world that are different than yours.
Mhm.
And rather than just saying, "Hey, I'm going to share your belief," you're like, you're also differentiated. I mean, you're still your true self,
Mm-hmm.
and yet you're still safe. And that's, I think, a
Mm-hmm.
part of the journey of maturity is finding out how to do both of those things at the exact same time. Be who you are, have your core beliefs, who you are, but still be a safe person for them to be who they are and to have their own journeys along the way. I think that's a real key to,
Yeah, that's a balance, isn't it?
yes, that's the balance here. And I
Yeah.
think that's part of the wisdom journey that I think you're on in this space that
Yeah, it's only through hardship and through the wall that that I am where I am today. I mean, for sure.
So today's discussion through the wall, it was really
Mhm.
getting to control, and
Yes.
so it speaks a bit to what we're talking about. The reason why I thought
Mhm.
highlighting them is like you don't have control over the lives of your kids anymore, yet you still love them in
Mhm.
a huge way. It's not that control was the thing that you needed to love them; is you love them no matter where they go, how they approach it. Control isn't necessary, but it's a hard thing for us to release for ourselves even.
Mhm.
And the topic today was again out of the emotionally healthy spirituality, day by day. We've been going through the series of going through the wall that they have, because the wall is such a powerful transformer of our lives. And we both believe that a cancer journey is a journey through the wall, because it forces you to face something. And I think today's topic that about this is so key. This particular day by day, it talks about Job going through the wall, that he was brought great hardship, more than maybe anyone else in scripture, where he
Mhm.
lost his family, his wealth, and yet he came, when this all happened to him, you couldn't point to something in his life and say, well, that's the reason. It's because of your own sinful, bad, negative actions that caused it. It seemed to come out of nowhere. And so that was pictured as the wildness of God allowing this to happen because it seems unfair.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you in a second, hey, is there areas of your life that it feels the same with? But I wanted to read this Richard Rohr quote that was in here just to really tee
Mhm.
this up a little bit, because I thought it was really good to explain something about control. And here it is. Um, that utter and absolute freedom of God is fortunately used totally in our favor, even though we are still afraid of it. It's called providence, forgiveness, free election, or mercy. But to us, it feels like wildness, precisely because we cannot control it. Wow. Manipulate it, direct it, earn it, or lose it. Anyone into controlling God by his or her actions will feel very useless, impotent, and ineffective. And so to me, I just think there has to be such a close tie. And whether or not, do you agree with that quote? And does your journey
Hmm.
reflect that? Have you experienced what it means to, it ties with recovery, because you and I are both recovery freaks, whatever. We believe a lot in
Recovery
like the 12,
freaks.
well,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
in the
No,
world
I get it.
standards, I think we
Yeah.
are, right.
Yeah. For sure.
I like this, the fellowship of, what's the term I've heard of the, trying to think of this, like it's like the fellowship of the wounded hand or something like that. It's this,
Yeah.
it's the idea that recognizing that your brokenness, you have some
Yeah.
deficiencies.
Yeah.
I think I'm trying to get back to in recovery.
Yeah.
One of the first steps is came to believe that we were powerless.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's we don't have control.
Mm-hmm.
And so a cancer journey really does, your journey talks about in the start, and I'll let you take into this a little bit, but there was a time where I think you felt like you still had control because there were medical
Mm-hmm.
solutions.
Yeah.
But as soon as the medical solutions were taken away,
Mm-hmm.
you lost control.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to just kind of hear your perspective, and you think about the Richard Rohr quote,
Yeah.
that there's something really big going on here inside of these journeys that we're
Yeah.
exploring about ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's highly profound, that quote. I think that many people and many, I'll call them godly people who believe in God as a higher power, that their faith, their belief about God has really come into question because of, and I'm going to phrase it like this because it's helpful for me, accepting the fact that God is God. Like, he's in charge and he will do things his ways, his way. And I think that so many times we, and I'll put we, think of him as a vending machine. You know, we insert what we think are the good works or performance, whatever, and we're going to get the candy. It's going to be dispensed. And, you know, I think that is one of the great, I mean, in Hebrews, it says Jesus, son though he was, learned obedience from what he suffered. And I've often, how could Jesus learn anything? But I think that it's demonstrated in the Garden of Gethsemane when Jesus is faced with this, what looked like an insurmountable task that he had to do. And he agonized. He clearly had an emotional upset, agony going on. I mean, he was agonizing. And yet what he said was, not my will, but your will be done. And you know, I think Jesus was in the place of, I'd rather not do this. I don't want to do it. God, spare me from this, but yet not my will, but your will be done. And I think there's, in my own journey, I'll come back to my own journey. So many times after 20 years, and I mean, it's hard to explain the journey to people because I look okay. I look fairly healthy.
You are wearing Skechers today.
I am. I know I'm wearing Skechers. I've become an old man. I already am, but I've become one. But anyway, for all you Sketcher wearers, sorry. So anyway, there were so many times, well, when I explain my journey, and I'm not using hyperbole or anything. I mean, there has been over 50 surgeries, mm-hmm. and a handful of very major surgeries in which there were more than one surgeon involved, and you know, they've said this one of my surgeries described as the most extensive ever done in urology back then when he did it, mm-hmm. which was 10 years ago. It's probably changed now, but, and then, you know, when my oncologist says my longest person on immunotherapy is 2 years, and I logged in 7. And then when we talk about, I can't even talk about tests and scans and all that. Forget it. I should be glowing. Really, seriously, after 20 years, because that's how they check. They would check with CAT scans and then PET scans, and there's a lot of radiation with those things. But besides all the other stuff that they've done, tests. I mean, I have one marginally functional kidney right now with a tube that comes out of it into a bag. That's a result of. But when I talk about twice Memorial Sloan Kettering saying, Peter, go home and call hospice and die, it's when I think back, so 10 years into the journey, I was on my 14th surgery, but I had surgical solutions. You talk about the medical community had answers. Bang, the next 10 years, the medical community is like, well, we'll throw this at it. Because I'm an anomaly and they haven't really quite figured it out completely. But many times through that journey, it was, I don't think I can do this anymore. I can't do it anymore. It's, Lord, I don't understand this. This is more than I can bear. I am so tired of this journey. You know, most people, it's not this long. It's they pass or they're quote cured. But my journey just kept going and going and going. And I still am checked all the time, and I still have surgical procedures for my kidney. And yes, so I came to the conclusion that I was not in control, because if I was in control, this would have stopped a long time ago. And I had to accept the fact that God is not to be controlled. And, you know, in Celebrate Recovery, we have the 8 principles based on the Beatitudes, and the first one is realize I'm not God.
Yeah.
And yes, so I had to accept the fact that God is God, and he does things that I don't understand. All the time, he does things I don't understand. He says no at times, and I'm like, hold on. Shouldn't you be saying yes?
I'm interested in this concept, and it's the wildness.
Yeah.
The thing that we struggle with is the wildness of God,
Yeah.
and when you tame God,
Yeah.
it's in sense you're controlling God. And so I think whenever we, even if our mental image of God is a tamed God, that means that we put boundaries around who he is and what he can do. And you went to Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he didn't try to tame God the Father.
Mm.
The wildness of what he was being asked to do is unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we reframe what's taking place in your journey, and other people can think about it for themselves, but if we reframe it, it's you've experienced the wildness of God.
Mm-hmm.
And the wildness is something that has threatened your life and yet hasn't taken it yet in this case. And you've experienced something that is unique, that you just described, this journey that is unique to you, that nobody else has your story. Few people have the wildness of your story as you describe it, and especially in a cancer journey. And so what we're talking about right now is the wildness of God cannot be tamed. And the story of Job really illustrates how wild God is. And I like this idea is we can either fear it or we can embrace it. And you and I have been doing this series from John Eldridge called The Sacred Romance. And the next chapter, which we've already talked about once before, but we're doing it again, is the chapter 9 talks about less wild lovers. And to think about cancer inviting you into a wild love relationship, but a wild one means that it cannot be tamed and it will not be controlled by good behavior. You can't force to yourself to, you can't lose it. You can't gain it. All you can do is embrace it. Does that resonate with you in the way you think about this journey?
Yeah. I mean, to me, embracing talks about acceptance, and then further than that, because embrace is a very intimate term to me.
Yeah.
I just want to add that, you know, when I grew up, I was a big C.S. Lewis and, Lord J.R. Tolkien fan. And I think I like how C.S. Lewis tried to capture this attribute of God. And, he did it by Jesus being a lion, Aslan the lion. But there's this, exchange between Peter and Susan, which are the humans that stepped into the other world. And they're talking to the beavers, and they're finding out about this Aslan character, lion.
I love this scene. Yes.
Yeah. And so, I think the question boiled down to, and you can elaborate on this if you want, but is he safe? Because he's a lion, right? And lions are wild and unpredictable, and they go after their prey. Sometimes I watch those shows where lions in Africa, they're just like ruthless wild creatures, right?
Yes.
Powerful too.
Yes.
And Mr. or Mrs. Beaver's response was, heck no, he's not safe.
Safe?
But he's good.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that I resonate with that description of Jesus and God, in the sense that, this journey for me in the cancer space, even my doctors marvel at it. And did it feel safe? And the answer is, the journey did not feel safe.
No.
And there were miracles of healing too, like when tumors disappeared
Yeah.
and the doctor acknowledged God in it. And I was as surprised as he was, right? And so I always felt like I was on this roller coaster or this train. I jumped on this train. I have no idea where it's going or what I'm doing. But I think for me is, can I still rest in my seat as the train's going wherever it's going? And I think that's always been a refrain of mine is he trustworthy? Can I trust the wildness of God, that attribute of God? And I think it gets to looking at my past experiences with Jesus, but also looking at scriptures and looking at my understanding of who he is.
If you were to reflect on your, let's call it the stages of your journey in this way of accepting this, because I think the reason why we go through the walls are to identify the areas where I think there's, and there might be more, but there's three things that I'm thinking about in your mind. Is one is you can try to control God, and then you'll find what Richard Rohr did is like he's not controllable, but the one thing you can do is maybe you wrap a form of spirituality. You change the nature of what you believe God to be, and you try to control him in a sense. The other one is to try to control how you feel about it. So you can stuff those feelings, and you can try to cover them up with and Eldridge uses the term less wild lovers. You can go to less wild lovers to try to cover up the fact that you're so afraid of the wildness of if God is actually this wild, that he would allow this kind of suffering, this kind of journey to be the case that you see in the book of Job, you see in your life. One of your options is to cope by some other some kind of coping mechanism that may soothe or distract, or have you where you don't really enter into what's really going on here. Or that third option is what you just described. It's like I can come to a place of acceptance of God's wildness, his unsafeness in a sense, but trust in his goodness.
Yeah.
And so, but
even
I think
when
that might
doesn't feel good.
What's that?
It doesn't feel good.
It doesn't feel good. That's right.
Not at all.
It doesn't. You're right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I heard something from Adam Young's podcast that I thought was kind of interesting. It was Dr. Hillary McBride talked about what healing, when it comes to the inner healing, looks like. And it was interesting because she made this point. She's like, we have termed healing as the pain goes away. And she's like, healing, her redefinition of it is actually learning how to walk through it, in it, experience it, and finding out how to, manage in it. Healing, the pain may never go away.
Right.
But it's learning how to live and function and move in it.
Yeah.
It may go away, but it may never go away. But healing isn't the pain going away. The healing really is our lives not living in denial, not finding coping mechanisms to avoid it, but is to go through it. And I was like, that's a really fascinating concept, because I think for all of us, there is things in our lives that are completely out of our control, pain and suffering, circumstances, death, whatever it is. And the journey isn't to act like it isn't there. And the journey isn't to try to make it go away with some form of mechanism. The journey is to lean into it and go through it, which is the description of what your life looks like right now, of having gone down this journey.
Yeah. I mean, and I have times of struggle a lot, and I might binge watch a Netflix series episode after episode. So
in one day?
Yeah. So I don't have to deal with maybe what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't say I've had in 10 years many breaks at all in the past 10 years of metastatic cancer, of the cancer looming over me like a shadow, because it's always like living until the next scan, until the next procedure, looking for cancer. When will it come come up. I mean, that's the question is not if, it's like when. So living under that shadow, it's a unique and special journey to live under the shadow of that. And there are, I won't call them coping mechanisms, but there are ways that I deal with it. One of them that's a biggie for me is I don't know, for some reason I like to think, what's the worst case scenario? Like on this trip, I scraped the rental car, right?
Scraped.
Yeah, I misjudged. I was on the right side of the car, shifting with my left hand, completely unnormal for me, and or abnormal, and I scraped the side of a building. I'm totally misjudged it. And my mind immediately went to, well, at least it's not at the bottom. I'm in Scotland of the loch, the body of water. I'm like, at least I can still drive it. It's not that big of a deal. And no one was hurt. You know what I mean? So when I do this cancer journey, my worst case scenario, and I do that in quotes, is if I pass. And I, fortunately, I'm a Christ follower, so I have a strong belief in the afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that when my soul and spirit leave this body, it's going to be with Jesus, because that's what the scriptures say. But that's sort of my worst case scenario thought when I'm going back into the doctor's office to a scan, to a procedure, whatever, is that thought. But that thought is a comforting thought. I don't consider... I consider a less wild lover to be if I retreated into alcohol, porn, or one of these coping mechanisms, sort of things, or performance, or, there's a number of them that I think would be a less wild lover for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's one area I want to explore,
yeah.
though, and that is your worst case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
I think for most of us, our worst case scenario is having to suffer
mm-hmm.
for a long period of time.
Yeah.
In that journey, it's not so much that facing death, and for some maybe facing death is their bigger step, but it's like, no, but facing the death of a sufferer, of deep suffering in that's our worst case scenario. And that's a hard thing to face. And
mm-hmm.
it's hard to know how that's allowed, in a sense that, that kind of suffering is inside of the scope of God's wildness of creation. Like, why did Job have to suffer what he suffered
mm-hmm.
as he was there scraping his sores? And these are, part of that mystery, but we don't get to tame God.
No.
And I think for us, there is great peace in knowing that peace where you said, hey, he is good.
Yeah.
And so we have to trust in that. That's learning how to be lovers ourselves. And there's great peace in knowing that there is a love relationship there, and that we can demonstrate that not by ignoring and trying to control, but by trusting.
Right.
And it's a big step in the journey. And I think that's what we're being invited into, is like go through the walls to learn how to trust a wild lover. Yeah.
Endurance is a big word in our faith and in scripture. And it speaks to patience under suffering, or that patient trust. Patience is a rough word for me. But if anything, I've had to try to dwell in patience over 20 years of a cancer journey. Have had to. I mean, I would love to get a fix. I would love this thing to end. But that's not God's desire for me, because it would happen. And so, developing a patient trust is a difficult process for me. Many times I find myself throughout the day quoting a serenity prayer. Many times.
It's a great way to really focus in on accepting the things you cannot change. And there's also having the courage to change the things you can, that you have been given.
And the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah, that's such a great line. And we've talked about that on previous podcasts. I think it's such a great prayer. I just think that for us to, as we're talking about this item, is just the whole journey through the walls, learning how to release control, trying to control God and things that you can't control. And And then recognizing you have to make a choice. Are you going to choose to try to cope with maybe synthetic ways of managing something that, would be called a less wild lover, finding, having a sense going that way? Or do you release control and learn how to love inside of the wildness of the situation, and then take that journey with an understanding that there's goodness there still?
Yeah.
I think there's peace in that.
Yeah. I mean, if the creator and lover of my soul is Jesus, right? If the thing that will bring intimacy with him is me to be submissive and to surrender to him, kind of like a parent-child relationship sort of thing, not lose myself, but make a choice to not my will, but your will be done. If that creates intimacy, and intimacy is the happiest that I am, because I know it is, I've had that intimacy, then, like James says, consider it all joy when you go through hardship. It's not a masochistic, hey, bring it on. I know some people that have prayed that, and that's not a prayer I can do, but just saying, okay, Lord, that whatever comes my way, and it might be something of harm, like a cancer journey, which feels harmful, but yet is the thing that could potentially bring the deepest intimacy that you could have with the lover and the creator of your soul.
So I'll close with this.
Close with it.
It is Job saying exactly what you said in a different way. My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. He now had a level of intimacy with God by going through this journey. He had heard about God, but now he'd seen him. And that's a deep revelation of the intimacy that you're talking about by going through the wall. And
I think, two characteristics that God will develop in someone's life if they've traveled through a wall, independence on him, is when Jesus said, I am humble and gentle. Humility and gentleness, which I think are really, that's a God-authored thing, but very attractive qualities for someone to have. Very meaningful and joyful qualities.
So another round of going through the wall. But we're saying embrace the wall.
Embrace it.
Don't bounce off of it.
It's hard to do.
Lean
embrace
into it. Yeah, embrace it. It really is. But thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you.